Welcome to Going In Blind. I'm your host, Zach Tidwell, and my guest today is the executive director and founder of Let's Make the Difference, where they are, in a way, instead of feeding the man, they are teaching the man to fish by creating leaders in some of the toughest communities around the world, including in refugee camps. So this is probably going to be a very broad, broad but very deep conversation, and I'm excited to see where it all goes because I think there's probably a lot of unexpected turns that this is going to take. But before we get into all of it, I do have a couple quick announcements as usual. If you've been listening for a while, you know that like many of my guests, I have a pretty powerful story myself, and I've seen that sharing it saves lives. So I've got a book on the way, and I also do a lot of public speaking. If you want to read a little bit about that or reach out to me to book me for a speaking event, then head over to my website at zachtidwell.com and you can find everything you need there. Lastly, again, if you've been listening for a while and you haven't supported the show yet through a rating or review wherever you're listening, then please do that on Apple Podcasts. Just drop by, leave a message and a 5-star review. That helps the show get discovered by more people. And if you want to start watching this podcast, the last handful of episodes and this one have now been on video. So you can go head over there and see my ugly mug talking to people every week. But without any further ado, Wendy, thank you for coming on.
Hey, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm so excited to be on your show. I've been listening to all your podcasts, and you're quite extraordinary, Zach. So
Oh,
honored,
thank
I'm
you.
honored to be here.
Yeah, this one's taken us a while to put together. You and I just coordinating everything. So I'm just, a lot of times that when there ends up being so many kind of barriers that come up, these will fall off with people and we kind of lose connection or whatever momentum was building. And so I'm glad that didn't happen with you because I was very, very interested to talk with you. So can you, I feel like a great place to start here is what led to Let's Make a Difference or Let's Make the Difference. Sorry.
That's okay. Thanks for catching it. Actually, it is uh it started about 6.5 years ago, and actually it started about 10 years ago before that, in 2009, after I had completed a 30-year marriage. I met my partner, Bill Spaltoff, and we started an adventurous life together, and we traveled a lot. We traveled South America for 2 years, with backpacks, and he just loved to travel. And so that became kind of something that we really enjoyed doing. But then in 2015, we came back to the States and settled in Nashville to be near my mom. And as she was, reaching the end of her life. And so we made Nashville our home. And Bill would continue to take little trips. I was working. But then in 2018, December, she passed. And and then in February, Bill asked, I decided to take a course. I had lost my job and I was kind of floundering, like I didn't know what I wanted to do with
Mhm.
myself. And he said, I decided to take this 7-month course. And he's like, would you care if I just took a trip around Africa for 7 months? Because I was
Oh,
going to be gone. I was going to be gone every weekend for 7 months. He's just like,
okay.
can I just go to Africa? So that was the beginning. He went to Africa, and we always volunteered everywhere that we went. And we always thought if we could be a spotlight and a megaphone for the people doing good in their communities, that it would make a huge impact, right? We could, help them. And we always, volunteered or donated or did something. Well, anyway, he found this school for vulnerable youth, and he volunteered there. He was mentoring the teachers, and he asked me if I could raise some funds for them because um they only made $60 a month, Zach, a month, and they hadn't been paid for several months. And he's like, "Can you do a fundraiser?" And I was just like, I hate fundraising. I don't even know how to do it. Let me think about it. I'll figure out something. Well, then I called him then a few days later for his birthday. We talked every day for 2 or 3 hours, but on his birthday, when I called him, a detective answered the phone and said, I'm sorry, your husband died in the night. And I was just like, what happened to my life, you know? Completely unexpected. He did have a brain injury, and that's another whole story, but he had some seizures, and that he had a fatal grand mal seizure. So I
Wow.
flew yeah, I flew over there and I met the teachers. They all met me. They picked me up in a bus, you know, with everybody that he had mentored. The director of the school was there. They took me back to the hotel. All the people that where he had been living for 5 weeks, they lined up and they just gave me their their condolences. They were crying, they were weeping. They loved him. He was there for about, I think, 5 weeks. If I did, about 5 weeks. But anyway, on my way home, I was thinking that was my last promise to him to help him. And we always had tried to think of different ways to help. And I thought, but I didn't want to just send money, you know, to Africa without, you know, you hear the stories, right? You know, it's
Yes.
kind of fraught with concern about that. And I thought,
Nigerian princes.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. So anyway, yeah, so this came to me like, what if I gave them empowerment and taught them how to fish instead of just sending money? So that was the beginning. I raised $14,000. I flew those 11 people to South Africa for a course that Bill and I had taken. We actually had met at, called the Landmark Forum. And that was the beginning 6.5 years ago.
Give me 1 second. I'm taking a note of that cork. I'm curious. I want to come back to that. I'm sure we'll
Okay.
probably, because I'm curious, I guess. And that answered a lot of questions that came up along the way. Because I was like, how do you the odds of two people like you crossing paths and having that kind of common direction in life is interesting. But I guess that would make sense that you've met at a place where you were both trying to educate yourselves on whatever that is that I'm sure we'll come back to. But so what in terms of, you'd mentioned you were taking another course at the time and even that you were still working. What was your professional background?
I actually was an interior designer for 20 years.
Okay.
And yeah, I did everything you could do in interior design, I think. I did I started with high-end furniture in Pasadena, California. I went to boutique shops doing custom draperies, and then I kind of got into the construction side of it. Then I went to work. We moved. My first husband and I moved to St. George, Utah, and I started working for a developer there that developed the most beautiful homes on a golf course there. And I did the interior architecture for 11 of those homes. And that
Mhm.
was kind of one of the highlights, although I did get published when I moved back to Los Angeles when my husband and I split when in 2008 when everything crashed. We had homes and rental properties, and he just said, I think now's a good time for us both to start over with nothing. And I was a little shocked, but
Wow.
I know the thing is there was an age difference, and you know, a lot of couples go through empty nest syndrome. And you know, and we were together for 30 years and happily, I mean, we both really loved each other, but it was about 5 or 6 years with all the kids gone and moving around and trying different things to make each other happy. Like when we moved to Pasadena, like we raised our kids on 10 acres. And when we moved to Pasadena, I was in heaven. I'm just like such a city girl, you know, and living on 10 acres was like a
Mhm.
sacrifice. My kids loved it. I have 4 sons, 4 amazing sons, and they're all married. I actually have 7 grandkids and
Jeez.
great great
Okay.
grandkids.
Yeah.
But um yeah, it was like trying to find that balance of like after about 4 years, I realized how miserable he was living in the city. So we compromised and moved to St. George, Utah, and there was a lot of opportunities for me there for my career. And then he liked to ride motorcycles and, you know, touring all over. And so, but after a while, it was like he never wanted to live outside the country or travel outside the country or go where they couldn't speak English. He hated flying. And it was just like, we never realized, when you have the family at the center of your life, you don't realize until that's gone, like, we really don't want the same things.
Yeah.
And he actually divorced me to set me free, is what he said. And it was like, now's a good time to start over. So I moved to LA to try to make it in Hollywood. And I did work in Hollywood for 3 years, doing set design and art direction. And
Mm.
I worked for a little boutique design store, which one of my projects was published in Spaces magazine, which was quite an accomplishment. So it was, but I always loved him. And actually, the reason that Bill and so I met Bill a year later, and then we had this adventurous life. And
Yeah.
when they were friends, and Ron used to say to me, "See, I told you you'd meet someone that wanted what."
Ah,
It was very sweet. And in
yeah.
2015, after we'd been traveling about 2 years, the kids called me and said, "Dad has cancer." And Bill bought me a ticket home. Before I even hung up the phone, he was on looking to get me back. He said, "Your family needs you. I get it." So I went back and I took care of him for 6 months until he passed, which was a really great opportunity for me to show people that we really did still love each other. Because, when you say you parted friends or you have an amicable divorce, everybody's like, "Well, you still got divorced."
It's like an
You
obligatory, like, oh no, but we're
know?
amiable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
So I was grateful to have that time with him, to really get everything complete, say everything I needed to say, and let the kids see us, that way, up until the very end. So
Do you care if we dig into some of that a little bit?
not at all.
So I'm curious, and I think you kind of answered it, or at least commented on it to some extent. So, I mean, you guys are married for 30 years. You touched on the familial unit, having kids and raising them, that becoming obviously there's a bond that develops there, and probably that's energy and time wise almost all consuming to where there isn't, that's how you hear about couples stop dating each other once they have kids, is because it is such an effort to raise your children. But do you feel like that earlier on, before you guys had kids, that there was more common ground there, and that just you two both grew and changed as adults throughout the childhoods of your children, so that when the other end came around, that distance had just naturally developed? Or have you thought about that at all?
I have. I was like 19. So
Okay.
I was so young. And he had teenage boys. And so they were really close to my age. But I raised them, I call them my own, I claim them.
Okay.
But the thing was, I didn't even know what I wanted yet, but he always knew that I was adventurous, and I wanted to do skydiving and adventurous things, right? And he was
Yeah.
always like, "Oh, oh boy, I'm not up with that. But I really he was actually my boss, my parents' boss. I worked for him while I was in high school, and
Okay.
I had such a crush on him. And I kept thinking he has so much integrity. He's such an amazing man. I'd really like to meet someone like him who is my age, right? But after I turned 18, I started seeing things differently and thinking, you know, I don't see anyone like that out there.
Yeah.
And when you date someone who's 19, 20, they don't have the same maturity or um
Life
you know
experience. Yeah.
yeah, and level of like family, I was always very family oriented, and so that was easy for me to step in. And when I met his sons, I was just like, I could be their mom.
Mm.
They need someone. And it filled the need for me to be needed, right? So
How much
uh,
older was he?
17 years.
Okay.
So
Gosh.
then it bothered him a lot more than it bothered me. Um, and especially as he hit like 60s, his 60s, and I'm in my 40s, it was just like, yeah, this isn't, he said, I'll never saddle you with an old man. And I'm just like, stop saying that, like that's,
Yeah.
I love you. Like, stop saying that. That's not, you know, not necessary for you to say that because no matter what, we're going to be together, And I really had that expectation. But he just I think he felt a burden. Like he said, I've always held you back and I want you to be free. And I was just like, what? You know? But then when I met Bill, I kind of got what he meant about like having common interests and, wanting to just throw it all to the wind and go travel for a couple of years with backpacks. I
Yeah,
mean,
that is freaking wild.
so yeah, so it was I think it was hard for people to understand because they always saw how much we loved each other and we always did. That didn't change. It didn't
Yeah.
change for me anyway, I always um I will always love him and he passed in 2015 of
Okay.
cancer and so yeah, it was an honor,
No.
to be able to be there for him and for my kids and to complete. I always say I don't say we got divorced. I say we completed our marriage, right? We just,
Yeah, you said that in the beginning. I heard. Yeah. Yeah.
it's like it didn't feel, divorce seems like a harsh tearing, like a ripping apart. And of course it is. It does impact your family and it was hard on everyone, but he was resolute, like, nope, this is the way it should be.
Hmm.
And then, when I was traveling South America, I was thinking like, yeah, this is more what I like.
Yeah. All right. I got one more. I have to ask this. I'm so curious. So with that, as once you knew that he was on the downhill slide, he's got cancer, and that you are going out there to kind of see him, be there for him in his final months. I get partially, I'm curious on one hand, because of the dynamic there, because it was, yes, you weren't together, but there was still love there. And then also because of the age difference. I mean, was was that or I guess instead of like putting a label on it from my end, what was that like? Because it's almost like, okay, you're seeing 17 years ahead. Obviously, there's, people get directed or not directed, confronted by mortality in different ways. Did you feel like you had that in seeing him? I mean, that's okay. This is 17 years ahead for me. Was there any of that? What was all of that like?
It's well, and yeah, it it's very confronting, and it seems like, I mean, I've had a lot of loss over the years. My
Yeah.
dad died in 2000, and I had friends die, and um then when he was dying, it was just, there was definitely a disbelief. This can't be true. My kids had been there through the doctor's appointments and stuff like that. I was just still like, this can't be it. This can't be it. And I had a really hard time at the end, just like, no, I'm not ready to let him go, you know. And he never dated um after we split up. Like, so it was about 6 years or 7 years, and I always wanted him to be happy again, because I felt like it was sacrificial, him divorcing me. Like, he wanted me to go off and have fun, but he never dated, and I wanted him to find someone to be happy with, and that was incomplete for me, But he was like, no, I'm content. I'm content. We had a wonderful life, and you know, I'm happy just like I am, And so learning acceptance is one of the hardest things, right? I mean, and I know I've heard you on enough podcasts, and you you've had to deal with this and come to accept like your life and what it is now, and everything that's happened to you. And that's a huge gift to be able to acceptance. Does that make sense? I don't think I said that right, but
No, I get what you're saying. No, it is. It is like it's almost a. It's weird because I feel like some of it is almost like once you have accepted, and you can look back on when you weren't able to accept, like it almost feels like rose tinted glasses a little bit. And you're like, oh well, it's something I talk about a lot is like perspective or purpose being in it. Like saying it retroactively, looking back, is almost seems like it's diminishing almost the value or the what it takes to get to where you can accept. Like what for you to have gotten there with that, what it sounds like maybe some of closing that loop was him actually being at peace with it, but like what did that for you?
I don't think that happened for a while.
Okay.
And then even so that was 2015. And then Bill was still traveling. There wasn't room for him. He came back a few times to say his goodbyes, but I was sleeping on a cot pretty much, or on the couch at my son's place towards the end, and just taking care of him. And it was like Bill's like, darn, you know, there's no room for me, so I'll just
Mhm.
keep traveling. So after everything was settled, he's like, so let's go to Thailand. I've got all these friends, new friends there, an apartment. And I was just like, I can't go this time. My mom is declining in Tennessee, and I I said I think I'm done for now. I need to go spend time with her. I just can't imagine. She was my best friend. And so we moved to Tennessee, and I got a job here, and then I could spend her years with her. And she was actually on hospice. And we were on do you know who Dr. Stephen Gundry is? The paradox.
I
I've
don't
played
think so.
paradox.
Plant
Anyway,
paradox, is that what it's
yeah,
called? Okay.
that's his first book. He's got a ton of them since then. But he was our doctor, and so we were on this very selective diet, I like to say. And we both had really bad genes for heart attacks, and um so we thought we'd be proactive, and we were just really trying to take care of our health. We made that our top priority. And so when I came back to Nashville, we put my mom on this diet after some resistance. It took her a little while to see it, but she decided to try it. She traveled with us. I actually graduated college in 2017. And so I told her, she was put on hospice about 6 months before. And I said, but you're going to be at my graduation, Mom. And she's just like, oh, honey, I'll be there in spirit. And I'm like, no, no, no. You're going to live.
It's a
You're
cop
not,
out, mom. Yeah.
you're you're going to see me walk across that stage. So, she traveled. We had to take her off of hospice and back on Medicare for her to travel, because otherwise there's just a DNR. And so when she was with us for that 3 weeks, and she ate what we ate, all of her symptoms kind of started fading. And by the time we got back and she met with her hospice nurse said, you're not dying anymore. And she's like, what? Because she was like 85. So
Okay. Yeah.
Um, so, but she got off of 8 medications. She had IBS and gout, and she had arthritis, and she was just in pain all the time, and all that went away on this diet. And so, um, yeah, so she lived until 2018, from
Wow.
2015 to 2018. And so December of 2018, um, she had a heart valve that was calcified, and they said they could replace it and she could live a little bit longer. And she's just like, nope, I'm ready.
She was ready.
And so, yeah, she died peacefully in her sleep. And so that kind of shook me up. Like, and we were talking about, do we still want to live in Nashville? I'm like, yeah, I love it here, but we've got our roots. Let's just stay here, and we can just take little trips. and I had a good job. And then in February, I lost my job. And that was the whole like, now what do I want to do? You know? And
Yeah.
so that's where the course that I decided to take is a course through Landmark called the Introduction Leader Program. And it's a 7-month course. And I had to drive to Atlanta every weekend to take it. And so I would be gone every weekend. And Bill's just like, how about if I go explore Africa? He said that's
Yeah.
a continent I haven't been on yet. So yeah, so that's how that came about. So
Wow. And that's all. First of all, you would be horrified if you came through my house. It is, you can tell that a dude lives here, but you can probably also tell that it's a blind dude who lives here. Like decoration wise, it's not really going on. But um, what what was Bill's background? I mean, or I guess we already kind of touched on that was the idea of being the spotlight and the megaphone for people, kind of all came to a head with his passing there.
yeah.
I mean, so what came next? Yeah, I know you raised the money for them, which I feel like $14,000 after having not ever done anything like that is, I mean, that's noteworthy. That's a lot of money. But
Well,
go for it.
yeah, I well, the course that I was in, the Introduction Leader Program, it was about sharing the Landmark Forum with people. So, my coaches and the people that I was in the class with, I said to them, I've got these 11, well, first it was 3 people. So I've got this nun and 2 of her teachers that want to do the Landmark Forum. Will you help me? Like, what should I do? And they're like, well, we'll help you raise money for it. So I'm like, okay, well then, like the other teachers heard about it and they all wanted to go. And I'm like, okay, now we got 11 people. And I'm like, yay, let's do it. Let's get them, like
Yeah.
Africa was like this huge untapped, continent of people who had no access to it. And there was at the time there was a center in South Africa and a center in Kenya. And I mean, there's what 190 countries in Africa or something. So to have that whole continent with just 2 little local centers, and so yeah, we all got to be a part of helping that happen. I mean, that itself would be it's just that story of that 6 months. It would be a great movie. It was like so many ups and downs and crash and burns and you know falling on the floor, sobbing, but why did I think I could do this? What made me
Yeah.
think I could do this? And 2 extraordinary miracles that made it happen. That actually made it happen. Like, for one thing, I've never done anything like this before. I'm not an accountant. I didn't even know how to figure out the cost properly. I think I was about 4,000 short, when I first
Yeah.
started telling people, I just underestimated everything because I didn't know. Um, and I didn't even realize their cost. And I mean, if they live on $60 a month, and I told them, you have 6 months to come up with $50. You have to do your part, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm thinking they won't appreciate it if they don't contribute to it, right? But
Which
I
is
didn't,
very valid. Yeah.
yeah. But I didn't even realize, like I said, they hadn't been paid in 3 months. They never even bothered they didn't want to bother me with the fact that they had to buy visas and passports, which were $100. And that was just overwhelming for them. And then one time, Sister Maureen, the nun that Bill had become so close to while he was there, she told me, I I I'm gonna have to tell them that we can't go because we can't raise the money. And I said, well, I said, don't give up. Like, sit down and brainstorm and see what you can come up with. And I'm just like, somehow we have to make this happen. And so one of the teachers at the school said, well, he said, we could buy a cow and we could pre-sell the meat to the restaurants in town and I can butcher it. And then we could make it a
Mm.
class at school, in the catering because they taught they taught we gave kids vocations, right? So catering and hospitality was one of the vocations that they had. So we called it the Holy Cow story because they raised $2,000 buying a cow and
Wow.
going around and pre-selling the meat, and that was how that was their miracle, just one of the many miracles that they had to go. And for me, I'm over here trying to raise the rest of it and just frustrated. Just I've got so much issues around money. You know how we all have our blocks, and just like
Mhm.
I can't ask for money. I don't know how to ask for money. I don't want people to think bad of me. It was just all this stuff was in the way. And that's what Landmark's about. So I was in the perfect place for it, right? Because I was getting coached the whole time. And one night, the first night, like when I got all the math done, um, and I figured it all out, and it was really close to them going, and I was working with the airlines. They gave us a discount, and that now I'm trying to South African Airlines, I think, and we got a group discount for sending the 11 people. And I'm talking to her, and I was in this course, so I'm trying to find a new job too, and I was taking this test. I was in Kansas City taking this test, and I had to, it was on 11:30 the night before. I'd been there all week training, and I was going to take the test the next day to see if I had this job. And I just found out that I was $2,000 short. And like I didn't have any income, I was living on my IRA. I sold that, and a little bit of savings that I had, but I was just like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm $2,000 short." And my friend called me from Landmark, that was in one of the Landmark courses, and said, "Why are you giving up?" And I said, "It's 11:30 at night and I need the money by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning." And he's like, "It's not it's not 11:30 everywhere." And I was like, "You're right. You're right. Why am I giving up?" And so I opened up my computer. He's on the phone. I've got him on speaker, and I'm like, "Okay, I'll start posting in groups, all over. Like there's Landmark groups, that are worldwide. So maybe if I put some in there." And it was kind of like hope against hope, right? And I
Yeah.
opened my computer, and up pops this messenger. And this guy says, "Wendy, I need your banking information. I'm going to wire you $3,000. And I was just like, and the phone is on speaker, and I'm just like, "Oh my God." And he's like, "What happened?" I'm like, "It's a miracle." I mean, I wouldn't even believe it myself if I just hadn't witnessed it with my own eyes. And I
Yeah.
thought maybe it's a scam. But sure enough, he wired the money. If he was in the Philippines, and I did a little video with him later on Zoom, like, what made you decide to do that? And he said the return on the investment was incredible, for
Yeah.
it put people in Africa in the Landmark Forum. I mean, here in the States, it's like about $900. But there it's the cost of the forum itself is only 200. Now, and let's make the difference. We have about 400 because we pay for their internet, we pay for food, sometimes there's transportation, we might have to rent a room.
Mhm.
So it's about, we ask for people to donate 400 to put them through so that we can cover all the expenses. But anyway, so then that was the first miracle, and it happened at 11:30 at night. And then so then the next day I was doing this course, and I was texting the teachers in Africa, like, "I've got the money. You have to the airline said there's 11 African names. If one letter is wrong, they don't fly, and there's no refunds."
Oh,
So
good
I'm like,
luck with that.
"Oh my gosh." And I mean, they were like long names,
Yeah.
right? So I called the math teacher, right? And I said, somebody needs to manage this and make sure this is all correct. He said, I can do that. I'm like, "Okay, you just text me when I need to wire the money. I've got this presentation I have to do in front of these people to get this job." So I was doing this presentation, and then there was a little break, and there was like 5 or 6 of us taking turns, and I have to keep excusing myself. It was rude as all get out, but I did tell them the circumstances, and they understood. So they told me it was all set. I signed the thing, wired the money, And then it was like, oh my gosh, it's really happening. They're all going, you know? So
Yeah.
then I got the job. I went home and I'm sitting there and they were in the air. So this was like the following Wednesday. They're in the air on the way there. And one of my coaches called and said, "When do you leave?" And I'm like, "Well, there wasn't enough money for me to go." And she goes, "Well, that isn't what you said. You said you wanted to be there so that you could get complete with Bill's death and,
Yeah.
be a part of it." And I thought, yeah, but like that was 6 months ago before I went through this hell to try to raise this money. I'm like, I just so tired of asking for money. And she said, "But you gave your word. Like that's what we all wanted to see." And I said, "Okay, well, I'll look and see how much the ticket would be." And I get on there and I'm trying to find the ticket. And I thought, well, I'll fly to South Africa and then I'll fly back to Zambia with them and then I'll spend a couple weeks with them, right? And I'm looking and there were no return tickets. They were on the flight in the air and every penny I had was gone. And they were on one-way tickets to South Africa in the middle of the Zulu massacre threat, you know?
Mm.
And I was just like, I, I don't even know what to do. So then it became, at first I made this cute little video with me with my suitcase, like, well, they're on their way. Do I get to go? Will you donate some
Yeah.
more? And they're like about $1,500 had come in. And then I realized like I can't, like they're gonna be stuck there. And I couldn't really, if I went online, their families would know before they did in Africa. And I didn't want that to happen, that in Zambia, then they would worry because most of them had never been on a plane before. So their families were terrified, right? They were really afraid. And I didn't want them to be afraid knowing that I had somehow bought one-way tickets. And so I called the airline and they're just like, "You signed the paper." And I was like, "I didn't check the tickets. I just was worried about the names. So even though the email had specified it, everything had specified it, they said, "I'm really sorry, but you signed the paper." But what they
Mm.
did was they offered $50 trip home, but
Yeah.
per person, but we had to pay the airport fees, which was $150, which was still
Okay.
another $2,500 that I didn't have. So it's 11:30 at night. I'm sorry I'm taking so long for this.
Uh,
11:30 at night. Um, I got a phone call at 11:30 again, and someone said, "I have a credit card for you to go and you to meet them there." So that was the beginning of Let's Make the Difference. I'm sorry
okay.
I took such a
You're
long.
good. I'm gonna direct this a little bit more because we're 40 minutes in here, and I just want to make sure we can get to everything. So
Yes.
we got that was the movie story of the beginning, which is awesome. I feel like I need to do some due diligence here because Landmark keeps coming up. This is not like a multi-level
Absolutely
marketing
not.
scheme. Okay.
No.
I
No,
just
no,
I had to
no,
ask.
no.
Okay.
No, it's a personal development company.
Okay.
And what we've done now, like the with Let's Make the Difference, the evolution of Let's Make the Difference, we have spread to 11 African countries with most of the participation has been in the refugee camps in Kenya. So fast forward to um 2025, we realized, $400 a person is a lot. And so we put like, I don't know, 180 people through. But the cost of it, and one of the refugees that introduced me to the rest of the refugees, Honore Abengo, he said, he was telling me about the violence. And I was just like, what can we do about that? And he said, well, I wrote this curriculum with some others. And it's called the Peace and Conflict Resolution Campaign. And I'm like, well, how much would that cost? So for $5 a person, we could take this campaign, which is based in the transformational work and distinctions, that has some distinctions in there about, self-realization and kind of like just listening to other people, finding peace within. It's really an incredible course. And so we've put 1,900 people through that in the last year.
Yeah.
So
It, go ahead.
so it's like the landmark. leadership and the people in Landmark are kind of funding the Landmark section of it.
Okay.
And what I'm doing is focusing on the peace and conflict resolution campaign. And then the other thing that we did is we invested in a bakery for food. So the three biggest problems that refugees have in a refugee camp is violence, hunger, and hopelessness, right? So we're we're hiring them to teach these courses.
And this is what I want to really focus on here for the next little bit is this, I've just recently started to hear of approaches like the approach that you guys are taking where we are not just giving things to people because obviously that looks great on paper where it's like, hey, your, $20 donation went to this, but like you are creating sustainable means of lifting these people out of these situations. And so really, I want to dig into this. So you guys,
Okay.
yeah. So you guys, this bakery is where at?
Okay, so it's in Kakuma. It's in the
Okay.
Kakuma Refugee Settlement, which there's some exciting things happening there, where the um, the UN has given Kakuma and Kelebai to the Kenyan government to make them cities.
Mhm.
So it's like long term, that's really good because then these people can become residents. They're no longer displaced people. They can become citizens. They can work. All kinds of wonderful things can open up eventually. But the immediate impact is they just kind of pulled the plug. The food distribution has been reduced by 75%. They were on 1,000 calorie a day before.
Oh
And
God,
now, yeah, now,
starving, slowly starving.
yeah, yeah. So three-quarters of the people they deemed now ineligible. I think the qualifications are if they work, if they have a church, or if they have a nonprofit, that they're no longer eligible. I could be wrong about the qualifications, but 75% of the people no longer qualify for any kind of food distribution. So it's like it's kind of like a bloody birth, right? It's something beautiful is going to come out of it. I always tell people it's open for business. Kakuma and Kelebai are open for business. And I talked to a lot of investors like, let's start some businesses here. You've got the world's largest untapped workforce. You have 500,000 people in these camps
Wow.
that want to work and they did nothing wrong. They ran from war. It's
Yeah.
only natural that they be a symbol for peace, right? That they be the peacemakers of the world because they ran from war, but they need participation now. They need the world to participate in establishing these cities.
Yeah. Wow. So it was Kakuma and what?
Caleb Bay.
Okay, I'm gonna misspell this, but I just want to make sure that I have this in my computer here. Okay. Um, wow. Hang on, I'm
Yeah,
writing down one more thing here. Or you can
yeah.
keep, yeah, go ahead.
So we invested. So Honore had this idea of investing in a bakery. And I called some of my donors, and people were in agreement. And we've invested in this bakery. It's producing 1,000 individual loaves of bread a day. 1,000. And they work 24 hours a day in the dark. The last donation went for them to get some solar panels and batteries and lighting.
Yeah.
Um, we need mixers. They have a clay oven. We love for them to get power. They need so much, right? But my goal, like my big vision, is 100 bakeries. 100 bakeries.
Wow.
Oh, there's 500,000 people there, and there's other countries too that are going through the same thing. And we have refugee camps in Nigeria. We have a connection there. He saw what we're doing on Facebook and he reached out. He said, "Can you help us? Can you bring us the peace campaign? Can you bring us the bakery?" I'm just like, we just have to get the word out. We just have to get the word out.
Yeah, and if you can scale to the point where you've developed 100 there, you will have honed that system to where it is as cost effective as possible, and bringing it to other places then becomes more doable. And this momentum is going to build. People are going to hear this and get behind this. This is freaking cool. So
I know. I'm so excited. Well, and then somebody I met a couple of weeks ago, they're looking at purchasing some bakeries as an investment and investment business, and they're gonna put Let's Make the Difference. It's gonna be a social enterprise, so they're gonna commit to giving us a nickel for everything sold. And so it's like, if it goes through, it's not determined, but it gave me, an idea. Like, I need to reach out to bakeries here and say, hey, do you want to partner with us in building bakeries in the most desperate, communities? And it's employment. It's not just, I tell my leaders, it's not about developing a business to feed your family. It's about developing a business to hire your neighbors so everybody can feed their family. So we're looking at all kinds of different businesses, whatever,
That's
electronics, we just, whatever, even like little factories or whatever. We have the people, we have the manpower. And with the Sharika plan is what it's called, where it's becoming a city, a municipality. We've got permits for businesses already um, that have been approved. So it's like, come on, bring your ideas, bring your funds. We've got people ready to, and willing to work.
well, and that also combats some of the hopelessness because then you are giving these people are showing up, doing something meaningful that is producing something for their communities. And again, that sense of purpose goes a long way. It is, I
Yeah.
am not just living in squalor. I am contributing to this thing that is being built. And now people are rallying behind us too to make this happen. Like there are people across the world believing in us and now starting to come here. It is just, again, it is. I feel there's so many like variables at play here. It's such a cool idea.
I think so too. And I just like I get a lot of ideas, and it's exciting. I'm kind of like the conductor, It's like all
Well,
all the projects that we have, they have leaders managing them. Because I know people like, oh, how do you do that? Or you're into too many. That's the biggest thing I hear is like you're too spread out. You're not focused on one thing. I'm like, that's why we're focused on the peace campaign and the bakery. But I have a women's division. I have someone who's in charge of that. We have, someone else who came up that wants to manage different orphanage projects. And so we have like an umbrella, and it's called the LMTD for Let's Make the Difference, LMTD Global Network of Nonprofits. And so all these different projects are happening under other people's leadership under that umbrella. So that's exciting. But the peace campaign and the bakery is what we're focused on, is Let's Make the Difference and promoting that. And yeah, so we started something called the Collective. And so we're looking for founders to come in and help us get this like stable, like a
mhm.
stable where if people like we any donation, any recurring donation, you can be in the collective. But we're asking for at least 100 people committed to $1,000, and that will give us a baseline to expand and grow these programs.
Hmm.
um and that's going to be called that is called the Founders Club, and we already have several members of that. But that will be, help us to have that stability of regular donations of an annual gift of $1,000, so that we know we can do uh our basic programs, and sustainable in a sustainable way.
Yeah, I've got one person who comes to mind that I'm going to tell a founder who I'm going to tell this about and see if he'd be interested. But um, with the another thing that came to mind, so I have a friend who is very involved in a nonprofit, and I think it might be called Believe Haiti. I can't remember. It's something along those lines, but it's, they're taking similar approaches where they're teaching people skills to be able, as opposed, it's the approach of teaching someone how to fish. To become part of the collective, does this have to be are you trying to go worldwide? Is it specifically in Africa?
Well, no, it's only in Africa now.
Okay.
Right now our leaders are all in Africa. Someone saw me on a podcast in Poland and reach out to me, and they want to take it to the refugees in Poland and offer some programs there. And so we're in discussions about that. Again, the leadership has to be there, and then we have to put the infrastructure in. But we also, the Dave Burr is in coming on with the orphanages. We haven't even named that project yet, but he's working with orphanages in Pakistan and India, in Thailand,
Oh.
and in Uganda. So it's like that would, uh, and we have also several grant writers on board now. So as we get these projects firmed up, we'll assign a grant writer to them and then just see what we can do. And having, it's kind of like a fiscal sponsorship since we
Yeah.
have a 6.5 year record. And as long as it aligns with our mission statement and our vision, um, we can co-write grants for it and have it be part. But I try not to talk about it because I know it confuses people, but it's like an ecosystem. It's a
Yeah.
whole ecosystem, and we want to address all the needs of people, you
Yeah.
know?
And even I've only, I would say more recently, gotten more of an insight into the nonprofit space and stuff and the intricacies of it, I guess. So I'm following along with this just because of that, but I don't I 2 years ago I would not have. So I don't it is I could see why you're almost like hesitant to talk about it in formats like this, but it's just it's so even if it's not directly with you guys, like this people at least need to hear about the concept of okay, this is a again a very sustainable means that
It's a social enterprise. Like
yeah.
we create a whole ecosystem and empower them. It's like, we talk about teach a man to fish, but I'm like, if we teach a man to fish and he teaches his village, like we've just solved it. We've solved the problem, right?
Yeah.
And really all we need is seed money to get them started.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like, I had people ask for money for food, and I'm like, we're not a humanitarian organization. We are about empowering people. We're creating sustainable enterprises. Now, if you want money to buy vegetables to go sell them in the market, that sounds like an enterprise to me, right? That's a
Well,
different story,
I,
you know?
yeah, I was wondering if that, if you guys have thought about, or if maybe an earlier stage of this was kind of carrying that torch that nun took initially with that cow. And,
Yeah.
yeah, because it does, that seems like a more, at least fiscally approachable early on to be like, hey, here, here's something we can have you do for now. We don't have the means to put another bakery in X location, but we can get 10 of these processes going where these people are raising cattle or something where that's like these
Yeah.
different introductory steps.
Or chickens, or
Yeah.
we've got,
Yeah.
yeah, Godfrey is one of our leaders there in Kakuma, and he introduced us to organic farmer there. And so we're like, this is really exciting because they have a lot of difficulty growing anything there because of the shortage of water. But um he planted his garden next to a school that has running water, so he can make sure that it gets water. We also, one of the leaders took on a project of planting trees. That was pretty exciting. We planted 600 trees.
Whoa.
Now, and they sent me a picture of of one of the buildings with about 20 trees around it and clouds over it. And they said, look, Miss Wendy, the trees of hope is changing the environment at Kakuma. And it just moved me. So
Yeah.
it's like, um, how can we, what else can we empower them to do? And with all of our projects now, we want to employ them. They've been working as volunteers for 5 years, right? So when we started the peace campaign, I thought, you're going to be paid to teach this. This is going to be their job. So now they have employment. And there was currently, I think, 45 people in training to lead the program so that we can expand. One of the earlier graduates took the peace campaign back to South Sudan, and he's teaching it in the war zones there. So
Wow.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm just like, that's incredible.
Well, and that's, I mean, really like what you would hope to see. Like like you guys are trying to create leaders, and it's happening. And that that reminded me, I wanted to ask because these are people who have run from war, and they're still on a continent that is pretty. I mean, war is very prevalent in that part of the
Yeah.
world, unfortunately. And you mentioned the UN, but you also mentioned that these territories were given to Kenya. Like who's protecting these people physically?
Um, I believe, I don't know uh, if the that's a good question. I know that there are armed guards all the
Okay.
time, and there was just an uprising in Caleb, and they feel it's a lot of it is caused from the food shortage. They're starving, and so the people are protesting. And then there was like this clash, and I think 32 people died in this. So it's like it's a really horrible situation right now because of the food.
Yeah.
And that's why I keep thinking we can put up, the a similar bakery to what we have for about 10 or 15,000. Of course, we want to improve it and make it better and have actually equipment. They're mixing it by hand. They have a wood fired oven, that they're just building the wood for, that they keep running 24 hours a day. But you know, and we're getting the processes down exactly like what you said. We're getting they sell the bread, to local businesses to turn around and sell to others too. So it's like they're wholesaling it.
Okay.
And then there's also like a little coffee shop or something next to it that kind of very primitive right now, but that so we're going to get the standard operating procedures down, the curriculum. It actually was a school. It started as a bakery school, and he had 12 teachers and 125 students. But then when that semester ended, he's just like, we just need to sell as much bread as we can so that we can improve and have, more things to teach with, so that they can
Yeah.
have, so to try to increase the profits. And then I've been out there fundraising for them too, so that we can get more, staples. We need the supplies, and we need the machinery, and even oven mitts. They don't even have oven mitts. So
Yeah. Well,
but
no, go ahead.
I was going to say, but I didn't answer your question. So I think the UN is probably still involved with it, because I think it was a 3-year transition that started in March, called the
Okay.
Sharika Plan, where the UN is backing out and handing it over to Kenya. But I know that it is patrolled. It's very dangerous. They all have to be in their homes by 5:30, curfew. Then yeah, so we are planning a trip there next year in May. And so if you want to come along.
Do you need a blind front man? I'll be your blind front man. That would be freaking cool. I'll bake some bread. I'll bake the shit out of some bread.
We can do a live podcast from the Kakuma
That
Refugee.
would be freaking cool.
I
Yeah.
know. So we have room for 7 more people.
Okay.
7 more people, and there's a 12-day safari that can go with that. And yeah, so but we're looking for investors to film a documentary while we're there.
Hmm.
As the 7-year, May will be our 7th year. That's our 7-year
Okay.
anniversary while
Man,
we're there.
we're gonna have to talk offline about some stuff, but
Okay.
okay. But
Yeah.
the documentary, I mean, is this just, are you just now kind of getting the ball rolling with this and
Well,
trying to go ahead?
yeah. Well, my new COO is Tony Kaufman, and she is an Emmy Award winning producer, television producer, and she does events and things like that. So she's helping me. We're just now starting on the 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 documentary and what we want it to cover. We're figuring about 3 days of filming there,
Okay.
and then we have a lot of footage over the years that from and we have other countries. We have leaders in Nigeria, and Zambia is where we started. and Uganda. We have several orphanages there and some people there too. So we just have to get it all mapped out. But we want to just tell the story and inspire people to participate. Right? This is an incredible opportunity at a really unique time in the world, right? And with Kakuma and Kalebai becoming municipalities, it's like a new city is born. All these people, when I first started in 2022 in the refugee camps, they were threatening to close it down and disperse 500,000 people to other countries. And these people have so much uncertainty in their life. They've lived with so much uncertainty and trauma and just the upheaval and the lack of food and all that. And so this is really, I think it's going to be a good thing long term.
Yeah.
It's just really, really hard right now. But we can come in and invest and, make something of it and be a part of history. So anyway, I'm excited about it.
It is. It's the momentum, and it will when it as it starts to take off. If it isn't already, like that will be at an exponential rate. It's just getting it rolling. This is again. I am so excited about this. This is so cool. So I'm sure other people are going to hear this and have the same thing and want to get involved with it. And so all these folks in these two municipalities, they are still living in camp situations, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we're talking there are some homes that have been built with the clay bricks, you know. Mainly I haven't seen a lot of homes like that actually. It's more of like the churches, some of the community centers, are more stable. They have corrugated aluminum roofs. But it just all depends, on the donations that come in for their particular charity if they can do more. I know that Honore, he has like a compound. It's all corrugated aluminum, but he has to have security around it.
Yeah.
And there's just so much to be done. But I think individual homes are very primitive. Most of them are dirt. Most of all the photographs I've seen are dirt floors. There's very little running water anywhere. I was 4 years in before one of my leaders asked if we could delay the meeting for an hour while they waited in line for water. And I was blown back. Like all these years, I didn't know how primitive their conditions were. But I mean, they've sent me pictures when they get malaria or typhoid and they're in the hospital. It's a IV bag nailed to a plywood wall.
That's
That's what it
most of
looks
the
like.
world. That is
Yeah.
most of the world still.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
So, yeah.
that's because I think it's something like I think, oh God, it's some crazy like poverty statistic based on the cost of living. Like I think if you're in the top 90% or if you're in the what is it? If you're in like the top 90% of America, I think you're in the top 1% of the world wealth wise. It's something crazy like that. Like the standard of living elsewhere outside of, Europe here and a couple other places, obviously Asia's there, but like most places it's still squalor like that. A lot of South America is that way, obviously Africa, like most
Yeah.
of Africa. And it's just we forget because
Yeah.
we're so inundated with everything and it's
Yeah.
the media obviously focuses more on stuff that triggers outrage because it feeds into that cycle of the ad revenue from click-through rates and just people being at each other's throats, which I think probably speaks to another cause that I know that you are becoming more passionate about, or maybe not even becoming more passionate about, but that you've communicated that you're passionate about. That this our I guess source of information, at least in conventional means, is largely around these polarizing kinds of things. And it's unfortunate that our society is set up that way that we don't hear those things. But I know y- you're passionate about this idea of starting to undo some of that polarization, start to combatify, I guess, decombatify, if that's a word, like the rhetoric in our society. Do you
Well,
go ahead?
it's like the peace campaign. The the curriculum from the peace campaign, and it's something that I'm rewriting for the U.S. and I think I'm going to hit the road and see about offering it to businesses or schools or just see where I can bring it. But the first day, it's about inner peace, right? And here's the three things: it's gratitude, it's forgiveness, and it's acceptance. Those are really the three main things needed to have inner peace. But then the second day they talk about interpersonal peace, but it's really getting like your opinion is a point of view and you could be wrong. I mean, how many of the time do we think something is a certain way and then we get more information and then we're like, oh, well, that isn't how I thought it was. And then we have a new perspective on things. And it's about being open to seeing other people's point of view. And just to finish with the peace campaign, what I love about what they do is they they say it's important to realize when you have an impasse and you need to have mediation and bring a third party in to help discuss things through. And what I love about it in the refugee camp, because these are displaced people that left their families, that left their tribes, they introduce them to the community leaders that they can go to when they have an issue. That makes me cry because they're creating community. And that's what we need. We need that here. And one last thing about that, the last day they talk about becoming global peace ambassadors. And that's what we need to take a stand and just say, that's me. I want to be a global peace ambassador. So one of the things that we were talking about beforehand is there's an organization called Braver Angels. And it's where people can come and learn how to discuss inflammatory or disagreements, and their commitment is to end toxic politics and to heal the division in our country, or in the world, wherever it is. It's open to anybody, but they have rules, the rules of engagement. You can only talk about your point of view and you can't say what other people think or feel. And then it's just opens this dialogue, and it's a safe place to share your opinions and your viewpoints and ask questions like, why do you feel that way? And what made you, you know, go to that, you know, um, uh, decision about it. So anyway,
Well, and I really I wanted to talk about this because it is, yes, it is a obviously it's a big issue here, and in I think in other first world countries we're seeing the same kind of thing. It's again, I think some of it, you kind of touched on it on the concept of people having a particular opinion, view, whatever you want to call it, on something, but it's with incomplete information. I think, again, that kind of ties back into the conventional media shape things in a way that provides them in a limited form to exact some of those reactions and those behaviors from people. And then sort of the algorithms online. People don't realize that every time you engage with something that's presented to you through a social media algorithm or anywhere else, the content that you are subsequently shown after that will be farther down that lane, and then farther down that lane, and farther down that lane, because you're giving it an input that says, yes, I will respond to this, whether that is a positive or negative response. They just care that you continue to engage. And I don't know that people are that aware of that being the mechanism of how those content serving algorithms work. But really interesting thing that came out this year. So I don't know what this organization's acronym used to mean, because it's my understanding that it just recently changed, and I only just became aware of them because of this particular study that I'm going to talk about. It's the Foundational for Individual Rights and Expression, and they used to focus specifically on campuses, right? It was something to do along the same line, like freedom of speech, but on college campuses. And they do an annual study. Um, if I will declare the findings of it before I go look for the name here to double check so that I can quote it correctly. But the annually they do this study basically asking, and one of the things that they ask college students on these campuses is, hey, what do you believe at any point in time that violence is a justifiable means to combat someone else's speech? And so they do this every year. I think in 2020, if I remember right, the rate was about 1 in 5 students on college campuses believed that violence was a justifiable means, so something like the Charlie Kirk assassination, that would be a justifiable means of combating speech that, for whatever reason you disagree with. I think a lot of it, from what I could tell reading the article, was, people frame it as being viewed as dangerous to them. But, hate speech, which has become this very broad kind of umbrella term that people can attach to things. But when they did that study this year, it is 1 in 3 students on college campuses said that yes, it is justifiable. And when they looked at it on a more, on a more granular level, the students will self-identify where they lean politically, whether that be, I think it was, on a scale of strong Republican to strong Democrat, and then things in between. And it's across that entire spectrum. It doesn't matter what the group is. So
Wow.
this is a systemic thing that it seems to be starting to be a learned belief, right? Because
Yeah.
it's been in the scale of a few years here, 5 years, where that shift has gone from 1 in 5 to 1 in 3. That's dangerous. And
It's so dangerous. Wow.
so I think an organization like these guys, and my understanding with the Bravery Angels, you're not directly like affiliated, and then this is more so of you kind of coming back to that role of being the spotlight slash megaphone for people, correct? This is just something that,
Mhm.
it's like, how
Yeah.
valuable and how necessary is that right now? You know?
Yeah. I mean, and it was actually this gal in Poland that reached out to me that told me about it. And she goes to the one in Illinois. And she's an American living in Poland. And so
Okay.
she, keeps tabs on what's happening here. Um, but yeah, so it's a really an interesting afternoon. You go and people present their different points of view, and then and you ask questions about it or you make comments about it. Why do you agree or disagree, or what your point of view is? And I know I said some things that they were just had never thought about before, because I'm a contrarian, and I kind of skeptical about mainstream media, and so I look for other sources of information. And they were just like they'd never heard of some of the ideas that I had, you know.
When you go ahead and I'll ask after.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
Well, when you look for other means outside of, conventional sources of media, do you try and find source? And I'm asking this because I'm curious if you one, if you are you looking for places that tend to not take a side and are presenting more of just the information as it is without putting any commentary, like that editorial spin on things?
I mean, that's an optimum, but it's really hard to find. But
Okay.
it's kind of like if you um you just try to read all of the sides, and like which one sounds more credible, or which one, who's funding this, like
Yeah.
where's, follow the money is what I always like, follow the money, who's making money on this, and what kind of impact does it have on society? And I don't know, and I just don't ever feel safe talking about my point of view, because it's a question mark. Like I just question everything. And
Yeah.
I just and people seem to just accept, well, that's what the World Health Organization says. Or I'm like, yeah, but I don't know that I trust them. It seems like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
We've
But
seen,
anyway,
yeah. I, I mean, it's a healthy distrust, right? You should be questioning these things, especially when it is coming from what is supposed to be an authoritative group, and not authoritative in the sense that, it's where they're supposed to be the source of truth for something. You do need to
yeah,
question, and we've seen that if I think, again, people are starting to become more cognizant of that
mhm,
narratives are shaped for, and it doesn't have to be directly who owns the company. It can be who's advertising on the very article that you're reading, like,
exactly.
um, but it is so, I got really hopeful when you started saying that you look for alternative means, because I've been trying to find somewhere that I can go that is just the presentation of the information to read about,
Yeah,
not because I won't read conventional news because of, again,
yeah.
all the stuff that we've kind of talked about. But I think it's interesting, and I'm curious with you, like with you being hesitant to speak about your ideas. And I just thought about this as we were talking more. I wonder how much of that same shift that I just commented on from that study that came out this year, and that transition that we've seen in the past 5 years, that's around the same timeline of cancel culture coming out, and where instead of using discourse to combat a bad idea with a better idea and leave it out there for people to see that through those discussions, okay, this was the superior idea here. Maybe this person's idea is a horrible one. Instead of letting that discourse take place, we started shutting people down and entirely deplatforming people who had
Mhm.
bad ideas, or who had objectively bad ideas, or even as it went farther, it was not objectively bad ideas. It was just any opposing ideas is where it
Yeah.
became, and I wonder if that's facilitated some of that, but um, some of that shift that we're seeing highlighted through that study. But is that part of why you're hesitant to share your views on things, is because of cancel culture still? Is it just because of how intense people will disagree? What is it?
Yeah, I think people are just they're very passionate about their beliefs, and they don't have any tolerance for people who question. And for instance, for me, like the pharmaceutical companies, not that there aren't good ones. There are good prescriptions out there that we need, right? But how come like something like 80% of people over 40 are on like six medications in our country? Like there's something really wrong here. It is a for-profit industry that I'm very skeptical about. And
Me too.
they're not trying to cure anything, they're just trying to keep you on the hook.
On a recurring subscription for your medication. And it's just, I hold the same, you know, issues with that, right? And again, I think it's something people are starting to see more, but are starting to become more aware of. But it's just like they're, yeah, because there's so much money behind it, and what continues to allow that same system to keep carrying along and chugging along, that it's like I have a hard time even trying to conceptualize a basic means of chipping away at that block, and setting in place or setting in motion something to set something in place that would replace that, because
Yeah.
it's so hard. But I just
Yeah.
I again, that you should be able to talk about it, and I hate the fact, even as you went into that, you almost have to, even though that is a rational thing that you put out there. You didn't say anyone, you didn't villainize anyone. You just highlighted a fact that there's people are on an increasing number of medications in our country, and our country has the highest, even though it's supposed to have, some of the most advanced medical treatment in the world, also has the highest expenditure on medical costs and the worst outcomes, some of the worst outcomes in the developed world. But like the fact that, the way that you stated that, nothing about that was adversarial. It was an observation and a valid observation that
Yeah.
you quoted a statistic, but you still had to be like, but I'm not saying they're all bad because people will jump down your throat. Like that's why you
Yeah.
have to do that. And
Yep.
it's, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
You have to
And
qualify it. Yeah.
yeah, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean,
Yes.
there are definitely prescriptions that we all need and use when we need them, and I'm not saying that that's all evil, but it just seems like some of the big, like, oh my gosh, when you talk about Monsanto and Bayer and all these companies that are in our food, and then they're also in I mean, it's just all, I don't know, it gets to be overwhelmingly dark and sinister looking,
Yes.
and people just look at you like, you know, like, oh, you're a conspiracy theory. And I'm like, well, it's not a theory if it's true.
You also, have you ever heard where that term came from?
Yeah, it came from the CIA, right?
Yes, to specifically to discredit people who were, basically whistleblowing on things. It is like one of the mechanisms to combat truth coming out about things is to discredit it. And
Well,
that is where that term came from. It was the
yeah.
CIA used that as a tactic, which is
And well, and
pretty
here we
crazy.
are in 2025, and it is ridiculed. It has
Yeah.
been very, very successful at throwing any kind of attention off of, whatever. Like, oh,
Yeah.
people just shrug it away and just, don't even allow a question about it.
Yeah.
Don't even allow a conversation about it. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
again, it's an uncomfortable place to be, because it's like, I don't want to lose friends. I'm in permanent Facebook jail for something I posted in October 20th, 2020. I don't
Are
even know
you?
what it was. I don't even know what it was.
Uh, that's
So
funny.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I thought I was very, very conservative. I didn't post anything because I did lose friends over, asking questions about things like, I don't know about this, and I lost friends. So it's
Yeah.
like I just learned to shut up and just like keep it to myself. And
Well, it still happens. There's even, um, talking about vaccine stuff on here and the not whether the vaccine was effective, not whether and when I say the vaccines, the COVID vaccines, whether they were effective or whether the boosters meter, like, um, what the efficacy was, but even just talking about them or talking about the rhetoric surrounding the emergency use authorizations and the villainizing of some other proven drugs that were around that time, and talking about that stuff, I on YouTube still I've heard will get you demonetized and deplatformed. So there's still censoring mechanisms, just like you saw on Facebook and whatever, and stuff that I'm hesitant to talk about because this podcast is so new. I'm only a year in. Like, I don't want this thing to get cut before it really has a
yeah,
chance to start rolling because of that stuff. And so you self-censor.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like, I want to talk about things I can really impact. Like what we're
Mhm.
doing in Africa is having a huge impact, and it doesn't cost
Yeah.
very much,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like, I don't want to have, and I've got friends on both sides. My friends mostly are on the liberal side, my family are mostly on the conservative side, and
Hmm.
I don't want to be around anybody talking trash about people I care about on either side.
Yeah.
So it's like my friends start talking about those people. I'm like, those people are my family. Don't be talking about them. My family starts talking about those people. Don't be talking about them. They're my friends. So it's
Yeah.
just kind of like, if we could just learn to have a discourse, if we can
Yeah.
learn to just, like, why do you believe it? Like, curious, like a curiosity about it, instead of assuming that you know why somebody believes what they believe,
Yeah.
you know,
And
and
it's
I
really
have a hard
hard.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Just if we could just have
glad.
curiosity.
Yeah.
Curiosity. That's all I'm asking. Instead of hate, like, let's just be curious. Why would you think that? Like, what
Mhm.
is it that swung you to that side? you know,
Yeah.
just
I have
curious.
I only have two friends that I can talk that way with, where we have a very it's my a very close friend of mine and her husband, where we like they I have very different views than they do on things, but we are close friends, and we are it's like reason that is able to happen is because we can have that discussion where it's just, yeah, like curiosity is the leading, I guess,
Yeah.
trait in those conversations, and should be, as opposed to being adversarial and
Yeah.
but
And yeah, and when you look at the fallacies, if you remember back about fallacies and like ad hominem attacks, when you attack a person and they're just stupid, because they
yes,
believe that. Well, you're not. That's just a blanket, where everybody that feels this way is stupid or they're uneducated or whatever. That's ignorant saying that, because there's a whole range of people in with their beliefs that are in that crowd, and you can't
yeah,
paint everybody with the same brush.
it's
you know
yeah, I mean, that's the same tactic as labeling, as like the CIA using conspiracy theory to discredit people who are raising
Yeah.
concerns about certain events. Like it's
Right.
and yeah, it's a really simplistic way of othering people, and then I mean, it's assigning pejoratives to, which also virtue signals into your own group, and again feeds back into that echo chamber effect that is so prevalent these days. But
And damaging, and it's damaging.
yeah, culturally, I think on an individual level, it is too, because it stifles growth, and I think, even as you grow as an adult, your beliefs, you come to expand your beliefs or change things. And it's just that growth should still be occurring over time. And if you're just leaning down that same, leaning, almost entrenching yourself into this one thing that then becomes your identity and the basis of everything else, like you are stifling yourself. And in turn, amongst or across generations, that stifles everybody. So,
Yeah. Well, one of the new courses that we're going to be offering is called the Change Agent, and it was
mhm.
developed by Richard Messing, who he's founded the World Ethics Organization, and it's fascinating. And he talks about how our nervous systems, if the paradox of being human, but when you think of it, like how much of what we believe is true isn't. When we consider, I mean, if you just look honestly, you just take what and you just think, I wonder what percentage of all the things that I believe are true aren't. Like, would it be 10%? Would it be 25%? I mean, if someone doesn't read and they're really ignorant, then maybe 50%. I don't
Yeah.
know, but it's just kind of like when we come to the realization, like, oh my gosh, I have things that are strongly held beliefs that are probably not true. And I don't know what they
Yeah.
are.
Well, that's why
You
you have to
know?
have those conversations. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And be curious and try to uncover that and try to, the whole wonderment and discovery of what it is to be human is really, it's fascinating, and there's an aliveness that you feel when you're in that inquiry.
Yeah.
It does create, it creates as a sense of aliveness, because once you think you know everything, it's all said and done for you. There's a certainty is just, it's boring. It becomes boring after a while. But when you discover that one thing that you used to believe is not true, then it opens up a new world of discovery. Like, well, if that isn't true, then what is true? And it puts you on a journey. So that's the things that we teach our people in Africa, is like removing the barriers and limitations of your false beliefs, and you know coming to a place where whatever your circumstances are, they don't define you. That's just where you are. It's not who you are.
Yeah.
um Honore said one time, like, that that they are so honored that we care about refugees. I'm just like, that's just where you are. You're extraordinary human beings. They're really incredible. And so it's just like, that's just a label. We're gonna change what that means. We're gonna change that to be, sorry, I got a train in the background. We're gonna change that to mean the peacekeepers of the world,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's interesting, but it probably is, where they're at, where they've been displaced to. The locals who actually lived there before that are probably like, yeah, fuck these people. So they get that where they no, they probably do. So that's an interesting. I don't know. That's kind of fascinating to me to just think about maybe like what contributes to that lack of like self-value. Actually, it's sad that that happens, but like what is that? What led to that? Is that part
Well, I mean, they're
yeah.
marginalized. They're marginalized in society. I mean, they are running from war. Where they're coming from was trying to kill them, and now they're a burden, on another country to try to take. I mean, they're seen as a burden instead of seeing that they are the world's largest untapped workforce. You've got all these people ready and willing and wanting to work and to do something, and they're limited. They're limited by it, and you know, they can fend for themselves if we just have to give them seeds. We give them seeds, they can plant them, they can grow, they can create businesses, they can create an economy. There's already an economy there. I read an article from 2017, I think, about a refugee millionaire who has a sundries store, right?
What?
So, because they have stores. Not everybody in the refugee camp is poor, right? And some people, the people who have jobs, they need to buy clothes, they need to buy electronics. Everyone has a phone that, most all of them have phones, and they, scrimp and save, or they get somebody, to donate money for them to buy a phone or something so that they can stay in touch.
Yeah.
But it's like, so I mean, there's room for an electronics store there. And then if we hire people to work there, then those people will have money to buy bread and to buy bicycles. We need a bicycle store there. They could, sell bicycles. There's a whole economy being born right now there. And there's money there, but it's just not the majority that has it. But when we start building businesses and employing people, then they'll be, you know, it's exciting.
Yeah, it really is. And it's so cool. And I mean it because it was such a kind of timely development for you guys to have stepped in alongside with that Shurica plan becoming a thing. And it seems like a very unique melting pot that could become something very special and almost like a model for other places that are being lifted out of these circumstances. But I think this is a beautiful place to wrap this up. Like where people want to find you, if people want to support. I know you mentioned getting some founders out there. If where should everyone find you and reach out to you at?
Well, the website is letsmakethedifference.org. There's information about the collective at collective.letsmakethedifference.org. Um, and that's basically it. I have meetwendyhuffman.com if someone wants to talk to me, if they want to hear, if they have an idea for a business or investment opportunities or memberships or anything, whatever. I would love to have conversations with people. Meetwendyhuffman.com is my calendar.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you again for taking the time. I'm excited. I'm so excited to see where this all goes. I really am. This is so cool. So thank you for what you're doing.
Well, thank you so much, and it's just my honor to be on your podcast, Zach. And I just wish you explosive growth, and it's really phenomenal. And I've listened to a lot of your other shows, and I'm honored to be among them. So thank you.
Awesome. Oh, you fit right in. So, but
Thanks.
thanks everyone at home for listening to another episode of Going In Blind. I think I said it in the intro that I thought there would be a lot to unpack here, and we'd probably be a pretty broad episode. And I think we met that that promise. So take another listen to it, digest what was said here, and go reach out to Wendy and see how you can get involved and maybe start to think about how you can drive some of the changes that we talked about. But share this around with another curious mind who needs to hear it, and I'll see you next time.